The war room was quiet except for the soft hum of the holographic projector. Jake Sullivan stood with his hands behind his back, watching the blue light dance across the metal walls. Around him, 7 different alien species sat in a circle, their strange forms casting odd shadows in the dim light. Jake had seen many things in his 10 years as a human commander, but this room still made him feel small. The Galactic Council chamber was huge, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. Each alien representative sat in a chair made for their specific body type. Some were tall and thin, others short and wide. One looked like a walking tree, another like a giant insect. Admiral Vextar spoke first. The crystalline being was 8 feet tall and looked like he was made of blue glass. When he moved, his body made tiny ringing sounds like wind chimes. His voice was deep and echoed in the chamber. "Commander Sullivan, we have called you here because we face our greatest threat yet. The Zerathi Hive has destroyed 3 star systems in the past month. Their fleet moves like a plague across the galaxy, consuming everything in its path." The holographic display changed, showing a massive fleet of ships. But these were not normal ships. They looked alive, like enormous insects or sea creatures floating through space. Their surfaces moved and shifted, covered in what looked like skin instead of metal. "The Zerathi ships are biological," continued a new voice. Dr. Cathara was a small, green creature with 4 arms and large black eyes. She was the Council's chief strategist and had never lost a war game simulation. "They adapt to any attack we use against them, energy weapons, missiles, even ramming attacks. The ships learn and become immune." Jake watched the display show battle. After battle, he saw Council fleets firing everything they had at the Zerathi ships. At first the weapons worked, but within minutes the bioships would change, growing new armor or developing shields. Soon the same weapons that had damaged them became useless. "How many ships do they have?" Jake asked. "Over 10,000 confirmed," replied Admiral Vextar, "but they reproduce quickly. Each victory gives them more resources to grow their fleet." Jake nodded slowly. He had read the reports during his trip to the Council station, but seeing the visual evidence was different. The Zerathi were not just winning battles. They were evolving with each fight, becoming stronger and smarter. "What about their homeworld?" Jake asked. "Can we strike at their source?" Dr. Cathara's large eyes blinked slowly. "That is the problem, Commander. We believe they have no homeworld. The entire species appears to live in their ships. They are nomads, moving from system to system, taking what they need and leaving nothing behind." The display changed again, showing a single ship that dwarfed all the others. It was the size of a small moon, covered in the same organic material as the smaller ships. Strange lights pulsed along its surface like a heartbeat. "This is their command ship," Admiral Vextar explained. "All tactical decisions come from here. Every smaller ship in their fleet is controlled by this central brain. If we could destroy it, their entire army would collapse." Jake studied the massive vessel. "What's the problem?" "Send in your best fleet and take it out." "We tried," said another voice. This came from General Zorthak, a being that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. His species, the Corvin, were known as the galaxy's best warriors. "I led the attack myself 3 weeks ago. We lost 40 ships and barely scratched their hull." The display showed the battle. Jake watched as the Corvin fleet, known for their aggressive tactics, threw everything they had at the command ship. The biovessels seemed to drink in the energy weapons, growing stronger with each hit. When the ships tried to get close, tendrils of living metal reached out and crushed them like tin cans. "The ship's defenses are unlike anything we have seen," Dr. Cathara continued. "It has shields that adapt in real time, armor that repairs itself faster than we can damage it, and worst of all, it learns from every attack. Each fleet we send teaches it how to fight us better." Jake walked closer to the holographic display. The command ship slowly rotated, showing every angle of its massive form. He could see weapon ports that looked like mouths, sensor arrays that resembled eyes, and what appeared to be a dock for smaller ships that looked disturbingly like a birth canal. "So what do you want me to do?" Jake asked. The room fell silent. The alien representatives looked at each other, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, hums, and electronic beeps. Finally, Admiral Vextar spoke. "We need someone to get inside the command ship and destroy it from within. The adaptive shielding only works against external attacks. An internal explosion would bypass all their defenses." Jake turned away from the display to face the circle of aliens. "And you want me to do this because?" "Because humans are the only species the Zirathi have never encountered," Dr. Cathara explained. "Their bioships adapt by studying their enemies. They have data on all of our species, our weapons, our tactics, but they know nothing about humans. Your ship might be able to get close enough to dock before they recognize you as a threat," added General Zorthak. "By the time they realize what you could already be inside." Jake considered this. It made sense from a tactical standpoint. The Zirathi had been fighting the same species for months. They would have detailed biological and technological profiles of every council member. But humans were new to the galactic community, having only made contact 5 years ago. "What about the bomb?" Jake asked. "I assume you're not sending me in there with harsh language." Admiral Vextar gestured, and a small device appeared in the holographic display. It was about the size of a briefcase, covered in warning symbols from a dozen different languages. "This is an experimental quantum bomb," he explained. "It creates a localized space-time collapse. The explosion would destroy the command ship and everything within a 50-kilometer radius." Jake studied the device. He had heard of quantum weapons but had never seen one. The theory was simple enough. Tear apart the fabric of space itself and let the universe collapse inward. The practical application was terrifying. "What's the blast radius?" he asked. 50 kilometers, as I said. But Commander ... Admiral Vextar paused, his crystalline body dimming slightly. "The bomb must be manually detonated. There is no remote trigger, no timer. Someone must be present to activate it." The implications hit Jake immediately. This was not a mission with a small chance of survival. This was a guaranteed death sentence for whoever carried it out. "I see," Jake said quietly. "And the survival chances?" Dr. Cathara's forearms moved nervously. "We have run the calculations through every possible scenario. The probability of survival is 0.03%. Even if everything goes perfectly, the time needed to penetrate the ship's core and plant the device would not allow for escape before detonation." Jake walked back to the center of the room. The alien representatives watched him with their various forms of eyes, sensors, and light-detecting organs. Some looked sad, others seemed resigned to asking him to die for their cause. "So let me understand this correctly," Jake said, his voice calm and measured. "You want me to take my ship and crew into the heart of the most dangerous vessel in the galaxy, plant a bomb that will destroy everything around it, and manually detonate it with no hope of escape?" "That is correct," Admiral Vextar confirmed. Jake was quiet for a long moment. He looked at each alien representative in turn, studying their faces and body language. These beings had exhausted every other option. They had sent their best warriors, their most advanced technology, their brightest minds. All had failed. Finally, Jake spoke. His question was simple, but it carried the weight of a fundamental difference in thinking that would change everything. "For whom?" The aliens looked confused. Dr. Cathara tilted her head, her large eyes blinking rapidly. "I do not understand the question, Commander," Jake smiled slightly. "You said it was a suicide mission. I asked, for whom?" The alien representatives stared at Jake with confusion written across their various faces. Admiral Vextar's crystalline body flickered with different colors, a sign of deep thought among his species. Dr. Cathara's forearms moved in slow circles, her version of nervous fidgeting. "Commander Sullivan," Admiral Vextar said slowly, "perhaps you did not understand. This mission will result in your death, the death of your entire crew. There is no scenario in which you survive." Jake walked over to the holographic display, showing the Zirathi command ship. He studied its massive form, noting how the biomechanical surface seemed to breathe and pulse with life. I understood perfectly. But when you say suicide mission, you're thinking about it wrong. General Zorthuk growled softly, his bear-like features showing irritation. There is no wrong way to think about certain death, human. Sure there is, Jake replied, turning back to face the group. You're all thinking about this mission as if success means everyone dies. But what if success means everyone lives? Dr. Cathara's large eyes blinked rapidly. The mathematics are clear, Commander. The quantum bomb requires manual detonation. The blast radius ensures no escape, death is certain. Jake smiled and tapped his temple. That's your first mistake. You're letting the math do the thinking instead of using it as a tool. Math tells you what is, not what could be. The aliens exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a buzz of confused sounds. Jake had seen this before. When working with non-human species. They were incredibly logical, but sometimes logic became a cage that limited their thinking. I'll take the mission, Jake announced. But I need to do it my way. Admiral Vexstar's body brightened with relief. Of course, Commander. You will have full authority over mission planning and execution. What do you need? First, I need to talk to my crew. Then I need access to all your data on Zirithi biology, technology, and tactics, everything you have. That can be arranged, Dr. Cathara said. But Commander, studying their capabilities will only confirm what we already know. They are adaptive, intelligent, and deadly, Jake nodded. Maybe, but I'm not planning to fight them the way you did. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the briefing room of his ship, the Ranger. The vessel was small by galactic standards, designed for exploration rather than combat. But it had one advantage that the massive Council warships lacked. It was unpredictable. His crew sat around a simple metal table, their faces showing a mixture of curiosity and concern. Jake had worked with these people for 3 years, and they had become more than just a team. They were family. Lisa Martinez, his pilot, was a short woman with dark hair and quick hands. She had grown up racing hover cars in the underground circuits of Mars and could fly anything with engines. Her reflexes were so fast that other pilots often accused her of having computer implants. Carl Johnson, the ship's engineer, was a tall, thin man who talked to machines like they were people. He had a gift for understanding how things worked, even alien technology that no human had ever seen before. His quarters were filled with devices he had built or modified, each one serving some purpose that only he understood. Sam Parker, their medic, was a calm woman in her 40s who had served in the Earth military before joining the exploration corps. She had seen combat and knew how to keep people alive when everything was falling apart. Her steady hands and steady voice had saved more lives than anyone could count. Danny Kim, the communications officer, was the youngest member of the crew at 25. He had a talent for languages and had learned to speak with 17 different alien species. But more than that, he understood how different minds worked and could find ways to communicate even when words failed. So, Lisa said, leaning back in her chair, I hear we're going to ram a bioship the size of a moon and blow it up from the inside. That's the plan the Council gave us, Jake replied. But that's not the plan we're going to use, Carl raised an eyebrow. Oh, what's our plan? Then, Jake activated the room's holographic display, showing the Zirithi command ship. First, we're going to understand what we're really dealing with. The Council sees this thing as a weapon, but look at it closely. What does it remind you of? The crew studied the massive vessel. Sam was the first to speak. It looks organic, like a living creature. Exactly, Jake said. The Council keeps calling it a ship, but what if it's not? What if it's actually alive? Danny leaned forward. If it's alive, then it has biological needs. Food, oxygen, waste removal. Maybe even sleep cycles. And if it's biological, Carl added, then it might have weaknesses that mechanical ships don't have. Disease, toxins, maybe even psychological stress. Jake nodded. That's what I'm thinking. The Council has been fighting this thing like it's a machine. But machines don't adapt the way this ship does. Living things adapt. Lisa drummed, her fingers on the table, So instead of trying to overpower it, we try to understand it. Maybe even communicate with it. Or trick it, Sam suggested. Living things can be fooled in ways that computers can't. Jake smiled. This was why he loved working with humans. Give them an impossible problem, and they would immediately start looking for the angle that everyone else had missed. Here's what we're going to do, Jake continued. We're going to spend the next week learning everything we can about Zirathi biology. Not their weapons or their tactics, but how they think, how they live, how they survive. He gestured, and the display changed to show smaller Zirathi ships. Look at these vessels. They're not just ships, they're organisms. They grow, they heal, they reproduce. But living things have one weakness that machines don't. What's that? Danny asked. They can be surprised. Jake explained his theory. The Zirathi ships adapted to attacks by studying them and developing countermeasures. But adaptation took time, and it required understanding the threat. If they could present the bioships with something completely outside their experience, something that made no sense according to their biological programming, they might be able to confuse the adaptive systems long enough to complete the mission. The Council species all think in similar ways, Jake continued. They see a problem, they apply logic, they create a solution, but humans don't work that way. We're chaotic, unpredictable, illogical. We do things that don't make sense, even to ourselves, Carl laughed. So our plan is to be crazy? Our plan is to be human, Jake corrected. To do things that are so random, so unexpected, that a biological computer can't process them fast enough to adapt. Over the next 3 days, Jake's crew dove into the Zirathi data with enthusiasm that surprised the Council scientists. But instead of studying weapons and defenses, they focused on behavior patterns, biological rhythms, and decision-making processes. Lisa discovered that Zirathi ships moved in patterns similar to ocean currents, following energy flows through space. Carl learned that their biotechnology was based on coral reef structures growing and branching in predictable ways. Sam found that their healing processes were similar to Earth starfish, regrowing damaged sections from the core outward. Danny made the most interesting discovery. The Zirathi language, when analyzed, showed mathematical patterns that suggested a hive mind structure. Individual thoughts were rare, with most communication being variations on group consensus. They think together, Danny explained to the team, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Individual creativity is almost non-existent. Jake nodded. Which means they won't expect individual creativity from us. The crew began preparing for the mission, but not in the way the Council expected. Instead of studying the command ship's defenses, they prepared tools and supplies that seemed to have nothing to do with military operations. Lisa packed her collection of music from Earth, including everything from classical symphonies to death metal. Carl gathered various tools and spare parts, but also children's toys, art supplies, and cooking equipment. Sam prepared her medical kit, but also included recreational, drugs, perfumes, and food flavorings. Danny assembled his translation programs, but also games, puzzles, and joke books. To the Council observers, the human preparations looked like madness. Admiral Vexstar visited the ship and found Jake teaching his crew to play a children's game involving colored blocks. "Commander," the crystalline being said, "should you not be studying battle tactics?" Jake looked up from the game. "We are. This is a battle tactic." "How is a children's game a battle tactic?" "Because," Jake replied, moving a red block in a way. "That made no logical sense. The Zirathi have never seen a children's game. They have no programming for dealing with illogical play behavior. If we can make them think we're playing instead of fighting, they won't know how to adapt." "Admiral." Vexstar's body flickered with confusion. "But that makes no sense." Jake smiled. "Exactly." The night before the mission, Jake's crew gathered in the ship's small common room. They had spent a week preparing, but not in any way that a military manual would recommend. Their ship was loaded with quantum explosives, but also with music. Games, art supplies, and food. "Are we really going to do this?" Lisa asked, looking around at her crewmates. "Do what?" Carl replied, "Save the galaxy with finger paints and jazz music?" When you put it that way, it sounds insane, Sam said. Danny grinned. Good, insane is what we're going for. Jake stood up and looked at each of his crew members. The Ranger drifted through space like a dead piece of metal. Its engines were cold, its weapons powered down, its hull scarred and blackened from fake battle damage. To any scanner, it looked like debris from a destroyed ship, just another piece of wreckage floating in the void. Jake sat in the captain's chair, watching the massive Zirathi command ship grow larger on the main screen. Even from 50 kilometers away, the bio-vessel filled their entire view. Its surface moved like living skin, covered in patterns that shifted and changed as they watched. Strange lights pulsed along its length in rhythm with some alien heartbeat. Distance. To target, 47 kilometers in closing, Lisa whispered from the pilot's seat. She was using only minimal thrusters, making their approach look like natural drift caused by the command ship's gravity. Any sign they've detected us? Jake asked. Danny monitored the communications array from his station. Nothing yet. Their sensor sweeps are passing right over us. The fake debris field is working. 2 days ago, Jake had requested help from the Council fleet, not weapons or reinforcements, but garbage. Every ship in the Armada had dumped their waste, their broken equipment, their spare parts into space. The result was a massive field of floating debris that stretched for hundreds of kilometers around the Zirathi command ship. The bioship's sensors, designed to detect threats and weapons, ignored the field of junk. To its alien intelligence, broken metal and discarded supplies posed no danger. It was the perfect camouflage for a ship that wanted to look like harmless wreckage. 35 kilometers, Lisa reported. I'm reading some kind of energy field around the ship. It's not shields, more like a biological aura. Carl studied his instruments. It's scanning everything that gets close. Not with technology, but with some kind of biological process. Like a shark smelling blood in the water, Jake nodded. This was what they had prepared for. The Zirathi ships did not just use sensors, they tasted their environment. They could detect the chemical signatures of different species, the metal composition of ships, even the electromagnetic patterns of alien technology. Deploy the masking field. Jake ordered. Sam activated a device that began spraying a cloud of organic compounds around the Ranger. The mixture included everything from Earth bacteria to alien plant spores that Carl had collected from a dozen different worlds. To the Zirathi bioship, the small vessel would now smell like a floating garden instead of a human craft. 28 kilometers, Lisa announced. The energy field is getting stronger. I think it's trying to taste us. Let it, Jake said. We taste like every species in the galaxy except the one we actually are. The command ship's surface began to change as they approached. What had looked like smooth skin from a distance revealed itself to be covered in millions of tiny sensors, each one reaching out like a blind worm seeking something to touch. The sight was both fascinating and terrifying. 15 kilometers, Lisa reported. I'm seeing docking ports. They look like mouths. Jake studied the massive openings in the ship's hull. They were perfectly circular, surrounded by what looked like teeth or perhaps gripping mechanisms. Smaller Zirathi ships moved in and out of these ports like fish entering and leaving a whale's mouth. Take us to the smallest port, Jake instructed. We want to enter somewhere that won't attract attention. As they approached the docking port, Jake felt a strange sensation in his stomach. The bioship was pulling them in, not with tractor beams or magnetic fields, but with something that felt almost like breathing. The port expanded and contracted rhythmically, drawing in anything that came close. This is it, Lisa said softly. Once we go inside, there's no turning back. Jake looked around at his crew. Each of them had prepared for this moment in their own way. Lisa had her music player ready, filled with songs that no alien had ever heard. Carl carried a bag of tools. Mixed with children's toys and art supplies, Sam wore a belt filled with medical supplies and cooking spices. Danny had his translation equipment alongside joke books and puzzle games. Remember, Jake said, we're not trying to fight this ship. We're trying to confuse it. Be as human as possible. Do things that don't make sense. Make it impossible for the bioship to predict what we'll do next. The Ranger passed through the docking port with a wet, sliding sound. The walls around them were not metal, but something that felt alive, warm, and slightly damp. Bioluminescent patterns in the walls provided light, pulsing in colors that hurt to look at directly. Artificial gravity is kicking in, Lisa reported. It feels normal, but the air smells strange. Jake stood up and walked to the airlock. Through the small window, he could see a corridor that stretched into darkness. The walls breathed slowly, and the floor seemed to pulse with each step they would take. "Carl, I need you to start your show," Jake said. The engineer grinned and pulled out a child's kaleidoscope. It was a simple toy, nothing more than mirrors and colored glass in a cardboard tube. But as he held it up to the ship's lights, the patterns it created were unlike anything in the alien database. The bioship's walls immediately began to change. Sensors extended from the ceiling and walls, trying to understand what Carl was doing. The patterns from the kaleidoscope reflected and refracted in ways that seemed to confuse the living sensors. "It's working," Danny said, watching his instruments. "The ship's trying to catalog the light patterns, but kaleidoscopes are random. It can't predict what comes next." Jake opened the airlock and stepped into the corridor. The floor felt spongy under his feet, and the air was thick with the smell of ozone and something sweetly organic. Behind him, his crew followed, each carrying their seemingly random collection of human items. The corridor was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side, but it curved in ways that made no architectural sense. The walls were covered in what looked like veins or possibly nerve pathways, all pulsing with different colors and rhythms. "Which way?" Lisa asked, looking at the 3 branching paths ahead of them. Jake pulled out a coin and flipped it. "Heads we go left, tails we go right." "Neither means we go straight." The coin landed on its edge, balancing impossibly on the soft floor. Jake laughed and picked it up. "Straight it is." Danny was monitoring the ship's communications. "I'm picking up some kind of network chatter. The ship is trying to understand what we're doing. It's running analysis programs on your coin flip." "Good," Jake said. "Keep it thinking." As they walked deeper into the ship, Sam began humming a song from Earth. It was an old folk tune, simple and repetitive, but the melody was unlike anything in the galactic database. The ship's walls responded, sensors extending to try to understand the sound patterns. "The bioship is trying to decode your humming," Danny reported. "It thinks it might be a form of communication." Sam smiled and switched to a different song, then another. Each melody was from a different human culture, representing thousands of years of musical evolution. The ship's intelligence tried to find patterns, but human music was too diverse, too emotionally complex for a biological computer to fully understand. They reached a junction where the corridor split into 7 different directions. Instead of trying to navigate logically, Carl pulled out a child's spinning top and sent it spinning across the floor. The top wobbled and danced before finally pointing toward a tunnel that sloped downward. "That way," Carl announced cheerfully. The deeper they went, the more the ship seemed to react to their presence. The walls began to change color more rapidly, cycling through spectrums of light that hurt to look at. The floor became more uneven, as if the ship was trying to understand their walking patterns. "It's learning," Danny said, checking his instruments. "But it's learning the wrong things. It thinks we're some kind of ritualistic species that makes decisions through random chance." Jake nodded. "Let it think that. The longer it spends trying to understand us, the less attention it pays to what we're actually doing." They entered a vast chamber that stretched up into darkness. The walls were covered in what looked like gigantic organs, each one pulsing with its own rhythm. The sound was overwhelming, like being inside a living heart. "This must be some kind of processing center," Sam said, studying the organic machinery around them. "Those look like filtering systems, maybe for air or nutrients?" Lisa had stopped walking and was staring at one of the walls. "Does anyone else think this looks familiar?" Jake looked where she was pointing. The pattern of the organs, the way they were arranged, the rhythm of their movements. It did look familiar, but he could not place it. It's like an ant colony, Lisa said suddenly. The organization, the way everything works together. I studied social insects in school. This is exactly how their colonies are structured. Danny's instruments began beeping rapidly. I'm picking up massive communication activity. The ship is trying to contact something. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Contact what? I'm not sure, but it's not another ship. The signal is going deeper into this vessel to something bigger. Carl had been examining one of the organ-like structures when he suddenly stepped back. Jake, I don't think this is just a ship. What do you mean? I don't think this is a ship at all. Look at the way everything is organized. The corridors, the chambers, the biological systems. This isn't a vessel carrying a crew. Jake looked around the chamber with new eyes. The corridor ended at a massive chamber that took Jake's breath away. The room was so large that its walls disappeared into shadows and the ceiling stretched up like the inside of a cathedral. But this was no building made of stone and metal. Everything was alive, pulsing with soft light that seemed to come from within the walls themselves. In the center of the chamber stood something that Jake had never seen before. It was enormous, easily 30 feet tall, but its shape was difficult to understand. It looked like a cross between a tree and a jellyfish, with flowing tendrils that moved through the air like they were underwater. Its body was translucent, showing complex patterns of light that flowed through it like blood through veins. What is that? Lisa whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast space. The creature turned toward them, though it had no visible eyes. Or face, when it moved, the lights inside its body shifted and swirled, creating patterns that were somehow beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Danny's translation. Equipment began making soft beeping sounds. It's trying to communicate. The patterns of light, they're not random, they're language. Can you understand it? Jake asked. Give me a moment, Danny said, his fingers flying over his instruments. The patterns are mathematical, but not like any language I've seen. It's more like music made of light. The creature's tendrils moved closer to them, but not in a threatening way. Jake could feel no danger from this being, only a deep sadness that seemed to fill the entire chamber. Getting something, Danny announced. Basic concepts first. It's asking who we are and why we're here. Jake stepped forward, raising his hands to show he carried no weapons. Tell it we're humans. Tell it we came here to stop the fighting. Danny worked with his equipment, trying to translate Jake's words into the light language. The creature watched. The process, with what seemed like curiosity, its internal lights shifting to different colors. After a few minutes, the creature responded, its body filled with new patterns, more complex than before. It says ... double quote, looking confused. It says it knows about the fighting. It says it's sorry. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Sorry for what? Danny translated the question. The creature's response was longer, its lights dimming as it communicated. It's sorry for the destruction. It says it never wanted to hurt anyone. It says it's running. Running from what? Sam asked. The creature's lights suddenly turned dark. Red, pulsing with alarm. Images began to appear in the air around them, projected somehow from its body. The images showed space, but not the space they knew. These were scenes of horror beyond imagination. Jake watched as entire star systems disappeared into darkness. Not destroyed by weapons, but consumed by something that looked like mechanical spiders the size of planets. The machines moved through space in perfect formations, taking apart everything they found and using the materials to build more of themselves. The Devourers, Jake breathed. The creature's lights confirmed his words. More images appeared, showing the history of the Zirathi. They had once been a peaceful species, living on beautiful worlds covered in living cities that grew like coral reefs. They had no weapons, no armies, no concept of war, but the Devourers had found them. The images showed the mechanical beings arriving at the Zirathi homeworld. The planet's defenses, all biological and designed for natural disasters, were useless against machines that could adapt faster than any living thing. In days, the entire world was stripped down to its core and turned into raw materials for more Devourers. How many of you escaped? Jake asked. The answer came as numbers in the light. Patterns. Danny translated with a voice full of shock. Millions died. Only thousands escaped. This creature, this queen, she gathered all the survivors into one living ship. This ship, Jake looked around the chamber with new understanding. This was not a warship at all. It was an ark, a desperate attempt to save what remained of an entire species. But why the attacks on council worlds? Lisa asked. Why the fighting? The queen's lights turned sad blue and green. Her answer was long and complex, full of emotions that Danny struggled to translate. She says they need food, resources. The ship is alive and it's dying slowly. Without the materials to heal and grow, everyone inside will die. But more than that, ... Danny paused. She says they're preparing. Preparing for what? For the Devourers to arrive? The machines follow them everywhere. They're only months behind, maybe weeks. The Queen has been trying to build defenses, gathering resources to make weapons that might actually work against the machines. Carl stepped forward. The Council doesn't know about the Devourers, do they? The Queen's response was immediate and urgent. Lights flashed across her body in patterns that needed no translation. The machines are already here, Danny said, his voice filled with fear. They're in the outer rim of the galaxy, taking apart empty star systems. The Council hasn't detected them yet because they're being careful, scouting before the main attack. Jake felt the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. You're not invading the galaxy, you're trying to save it. The Queen's lights turned bright white with relief. Finally, someone understood. The attacks on Council worlds, Jake continued, you weren't trying to conquer them. You were trying to force them to build better defenses. The Queen confirmed this. More images appeared showing Zirathi bioships attacking Council fleets but not destroying them completely. Instead, they were testing their weapons, their tactics, their ability to adapt. Every battle was a lesson, teaching the Council species how to fight an enemy they did not yet know existed. But the Council thinks you're the enemy, Sam pointed out. The Queen's response was filled with frustration. She had tried to communicate, but the Council species were too different from the Zirathi. Where the Council used mathematics and logic, the Zirathi used emotions and instinct. The languages were so different that meaningful communication was impossible. Until now, Danny said, looking at his translation equipment, human language is weird enough to bridge the gap. We use both logic and emotion, mathematics and art. I can translate between your species and theirs. Jake pulled out the quantum bomb that he had carried this far. The device was small and simple, designed to tear apart space itself and destroy everything within 50 kilometers. He looked at it for a long moment and set it on the floor. We're not going to use this, he announced. His crew looked at him with surprise, but also with relief. They had followed him this far because they trusted his judgment, but none of them had wanted to die in a pointless explosion. What's the alternative? Carl asked. The Council will keep attacking the Zirathi until one side is completely destroyed. Jake thought about this. The Council saw the Zirathi as monsters that needed to be eliminated. The Zirathi saw the Council as stubborn children who refused to prepare for the real threat. Both sides were preparing for the wrong war. We changed the game, Jake said. Instead of fighting each other, we fight the real enemy together. The Queen's lights turned skeptical. She projected images showing the vast Devourer fleet. Millions of mechanical ships moving through space like a plague of metal locusts. How could the scattered, disorganized Council species and a few thousand Zirathi survivors hope to stop such a force? Because, Jake replied, you're thinking about this wrong. You're both trying to fight the Devourers the way you would fight each other, but the machines aren't alive. They don't think like living things. They follow programs, predictable patterns. He gestured to his crew. But humans are chaos. We don't follow patterns. We make things up as we go along. And if we can teach that chaos to your biotechnology and the Council's machines, we might be able to create something the Devourers can't predict or adapt to. The Queen considered this. Her lights shifted through various colors as she processed the idea. Finally, she responded with what could only be described as hope. She wants to know how we convince the council, Danny translated. They think all Zirathi are enemies. They won't listen to diplomatic messages, Jake smiled. We don't send messages. We bring proof, he explained his plan. The Queen would come with them back to the council station, but not as a prisoner. She would come as a partner, bringing with her the evidence of the Devourer threat and the offer of an alliance. The council won't trust her at first, Jake admitted. But when they see the real enemy, when they understand what's coming, they'll have to work together. Lisa raised a practical concern. How do we get a 30-foot alien through space without the council fleet shooting at us? We don't, Jake replied. She comes with us in our ship. The Queen can make herself smaller, right? The Queen's response was amused. She could indeed change her size, though it would be uncomfortable. More importantly, she could create a small biopod that would carry her essence while leaving her main body behind to control the command ship. What about the quantum bomb? Sam asked, pointing to the device Jake had set aside. Jake looked at the weapon that was supposed to end this mission in death and destruction. We keep it, but not to destroy the Zirathi. We'll need it when the Devourers arrive. The Queen began to change, her massive form flowing and shifting like liquid light. As they watched, she compressed herself into a smaller shape, though still larger than any human. At the same time, tendrils extended from the walls and ceiling, connecting to her body. The council chamber erupted in chaos the moment Jake entered with the Zirathi Queen behind him. Admiral Vextar's crystalline body flashed red with alarm. While General Zorthek roared and reached for his weapon, Dr. Cathara's 4 arms waved frantically as she tried to activate emergency shields. Stand down, Jake shouted over the noise. She's not here to fight. You brought the enemy into our most secure facility. Admiral Vextar's voice rang like breaking glass. Have you lost your mind, Commander? The Queen remained calm despite the weapons pointed at her. Her smaller form, only 8 feet tall now, pulsed with gentle blue lights that Danny had learned meant peaceful intentions. She made no threatening moves, simply stood beside Jake like a strange ambassador from another world. Listen to me, Jake said, raising his hands for silence. Everything we thought we knew about this war is wrong. The Zirathi aren't our enemies. They're trying to save us? General Zorthek growled low in his throat. They have destroyed our colonies, killed our people. How is that saving us? Because something worse is coming, Jake replied. Something that makes this war look like a playground argument. He gestured to Danny, who had connected his translation equipment to the chamber's holographic systems. Show them. The Queen's lights brightened, and suddenly the air filled with images. The council representatives gasped as they saw vast mechanical fleets moving through space, consuming everything in their path. Entire worlds stripped down to nothing, their materials used to build more machines. These are the Devourers, Jake explained. They've already destroyed the Zirathi homeworld and dozens of other systems. They're in our galaxy now, working their way toward the core worlds. Dr. Cathara studied the images with her scientific mind. If these projections are accurate, the mechanical force represents a threat level beyond our current defense capabilities. That's why the Queen was attacking council fleets, Jake continued. Not to conquer, but to test your defenses. To force you to develop better weapons and tactics before the real enemy arrives. Admiral Vextar's body flickered through several colors as he processed this information. Assuming this is true, why did they not simply communicate their intentions? The Queen responded through Danny's translation system. We tried. Our languages, our ways of thinking, they're too different. You speak in mathematics and logic. We speak in emotions and living patterns. Until now, there was no bridge between us. But humans are weird enough to translate between both, Danny added with a slight smile. We use both logic and feelings. Math and art, I can make your words mean the same thing to both species. The debate that followed was intense. Some council members wanted to destroy the Queen immediately, believing this was all an elaborate trick. Others demanded proof that the Devourers were real. A few insisted that even if the threat was genuine, The Zirathi had still committed crimes that could not be forgiven. Jake listened to the arguments for an hour before standing up. While you're debating, the Devourers are getting closer. Every day we waste arguing is a day we could be preparing. What do you propose? Admiral Vexstar asked. An alliance. Combine the Council's technology with Zirathi bioengineering. Create hybrid ships that can adapt and evolve during battle. Use human tactical thinking to make strategies the machines can't predict. General Zorthak slammed his fist on the table. Alliance with murderers? My people have honor. The Queen's lights flashed with what Danny translated as regret. We mourn every life lost. But if we had not forced you to strengthen your defenses, you would all be dead when the Devourers arrive. Sometimes survival requires hard choices. The argument might have continued for days, but it was interrupted by an urgent alarm. A junior officer rushed into the chamber with a datapad. Admiral, long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. Unknown ship. Configurations moving in coordinated patterns toward populated systems. The blood drained from Jake's face. How far out? 3 weeks at current velocity. They're not trying to hide anymore. The chamber fell silent. 3 weeks to prepare for an enemy that had destroyed civilizations across multiple galaxies. The mathematics were clear. The Council fleets, even working together, could not match the Devourer force in conventional warfare. We need to work together, Jake said quietly, right now. Today, or in 3 weeks, this entire galaxy will be nothing but raw materials for their machines. Admiral Vexstar looked around the chamber at the other representatives. The decision he made would determine the fate of billions of lives. What exactly are you proposing? Jake stepped forward. The Queen has thousands of bioships that can merge with your technology. Human crews can serve as liaison officers, helping the different species coordinate. We create a combined fleet unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. And if this alliance fails, Dr. Cathara asked. Then we all die together instead of separately, Jake replied. But at least we'll have tried something the Devourers won't expect. The vote was close, but the reality of the approaching threat made the decision inevitable. The alliance was approved by the narrowest possible margin. What followed were the most intense 3 weeks in galactic history. Council shipyards worked around the clock to modify their vessels for biointegration. Zirathi engineers guided the installation of living systems that could adapt and evolve. Human crews trained frantically to serve as translators and coordinators between species that had been trying to kill each other just days before. Jake found himself in command of the hybrid flagship, a massive vessel that was part Council technology and part living Zirathi bioship. The bridge looked like nothing anyone had ever seen. Crystalline Altarian control systems grew side by side with organic Zirathi neural networks, while human interfaces provided the connection between them. His crew had expanded beyond the original 4. Lisa still piloted, but now she worked with a Zirathi navigation organism that could feel the currents of space. Carl managed engineering alongside living biosystems that could repair themselves faster than any machine. Sam coordinated medical efforts between species with completely different biologies. Danny had become the chief translator, helping dozens of species communicate in real time. The combined fleet that assembled was strange and beautiful. Ships that looked like metal flowers, bloomed with living weapons. Vessels that resembled underwater creatures swam through space alongside angular Council warships. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just a month before. When the Devourers finally arrived, they came as a wave of geometric death. Millions of mechanical ships in perfect formation, each one identical to the next. They moved with mathematical precision, their tactics based on programs that had conquered 1,000 worlds, but they had never encountered anything like the Alliance fleet. The battle was unlike any war the galaxy had ever seen. When the Devourers adapted to energy weapons, the bioships evolved new forms of attack. When the machines tried to hack into ship systems, they found living networks that could not be reprogrammed. When they attempted to predict human tactical Decisions. They discovered that humans did not always make logical choices. Jake watched from the bridge, as his hybrid ship danced through space like a living thing. The Zerathi biosystems adapted to each devourer attack, while Council technology provided the raw power needed to fight back. Human creativity tied it all together, finding solutions that neither species would have discovered alone. The turning point came when Carl made a discovery. The Devourers, for all their adaptability, followed a central programming protocol. They were not truly intelligent, just very advanced machines following complicated instructions. They're like a computer virus, he explained to Jake. Powerful, but predictable once you understand the code. Working together, the Alliance fleet began to exploit the gaps in Devourer programming. They used chaos tactics that confused the machine logic. They employed bioweapons that could not be calculated or predicted. Most importantly, they fought as a living system rather than a collection of separate parts. The battle lasted for days, but in the end, the Devourers were forced to retreat. Not destroyed, but damaged enough that they would need years to rebuild their forces. The galaxy had time to prepare for their eventual return. In the aftermath, as the Alliance fleet regrouped and counted their losses, Jake stood on the bridge of his hybrid ship. Around him, crew members from a dozen different species worked together like they had been allies for centuries instead of days. The Queen, still in her smaller form, approached him. Her lights pulsed with gratitude and something that might have been hope. You asked them for whom this was a suicide mission, she said through Danny's translation. What is your answer now? Jake thought about the question that had started everything. When the Council told him it was a suicide mission, he had asked, for whom? Because he refused to accept that death was the only possible outcome. It was a suicide mission, he said finally, for the old way of thinking, for the idea that different species can't work together, for the belief that some problems are impossible to solve. He looked around the bridge at his mixed crew, then out at the combined fleet of ships that should never have been able to exist. But it turns out that when you refuse to accept the impossible, sometimes you get to see the incredible instead.